Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to the AstroHistorian. This is an odd thing to say on a live stream. Let's get to just more camera stuff here going on. How's everyone going? Hello, my name is Paul. For many of you, this is your first time seeing the face. Hello. My name is Paul, Berserker01, Batman Shelley, your humble host and space bartender at the Astropub, and your professor on the AstroHistorian. So, for those of you who may be confused, I usually do live streams on my live channel, the Astropub Live. We do things like the office hours, right here, where we talk about lore and other things as well. But I figured that it's the end of the year, and a lot of y'all may have not seen a live channel before, where we go live and stuff, so I wanted to do a quick thing. These things are not going to be frequent. If you want to go to the frequent stuff, you can check me on the Astropub Live YouTube or the Astropub on Twitch. Both will get you there. So, how y'all doing? Teaches the way of the first host, the AstroHistorian, Avroom, Shapasta, Ruben, see some of you in there as well. Dan Little, Joey, Adam, welcome y'all. So, if you have any questions about lore or anything else, let me know. I'll do my best to help out, to enlighten to you. I do have a Q&A section on the YouTube as well, so you can answer those as well. You're working. Awesome. I guess I can give you a little update on this year so far. This year has been a very strange but good year. This is the first year that we had the AstroHistorian as its own standalone channel. Before this, it was just the Astropub. I did my YouTube, my lore stuff, as well as my regular stuff. Oh, and for those of you watching after the fact, this is a live stream, so it's going to be a little bit longer than my typical videos, and it's more of a rambly and stuff like that. So put it in the background to watch, but it's like I said, it's not going to be a regular one because I don't want to screw up the algorithm for specifically this reason. Turns out the algorithm didn't know what to send my videos to and was kind of confused by some of the stuff. So I decided to, in August, I think, split the channel between the AstroHistorian, which is this channel, and the Astropub, which is a separate channel, in terms of content, because YouTube hates it when you do multiple things for content. So that's the reason why there are two channels now, and this is the AstroHistorian lore. Now, I am planning on doing lore for beyond just Star Citizen. I've already done lore on Cyberpunk in the past. I've done lore on New World, though that didn't go very well. And I have also started doing lore on the Starfield. So as Starfield is coming out next year, I will be doing more stuff on Starfield in the near future as well. Those are still going to be kind of side projects, because I do want to do mostly focus on Star Citizen. And of course, I've also mentioned that I want to do some Warhammer 40k videos. There is a lot of lore on Warhammer 40k, and a lot of people, great content creators, who make that lore. My purpose is to more make Warhammer 40k for dummies, but not in the memey kind of Gen Z style that a lot of people do, but more for the elder, more sophisticated old fogies, like most of my audience, who may be interested in getting into Warhammer 40k, but are intimidated by the just sheer volume of stuff. So, all right. I'm wondering about the history and ramifications of imprint technology and what it really means in games, since it's almost like a signal. What does it mean when you die outside of known space? So, imprints and regeneration is a bag of worms that humanity has opened up recently. They have no idea the full ramifications for. And as typical, humanity is just playing with fire, not knowing what it's doing. So the lore behind it is a guy by the name of Dr. Ibrahim was obsessed with trying to restore cognitive abilities, memories, and personality to people who suffered traumatic brain injuries, especially during wars and conflicts. And he's throughout the 2930s, he did some really good stuff. He was able to restore like movement to limbs and other kind of restore using a full brain scan of somebody, was able to kind of repair their abilities to move and walk and talk, but didn't restore their personalities. And then in the 2940s, I believe 2947, 48, the UEE did a clandestine top secret operation into a Vanduul ship or Vanduul space. And what they returned with was a device that was some sort of scanning technology, medical scanning technology. And they brought in Ibrahim because of his work with soldiers who had some experience working with the UEE to analyze the device. And he figured out that the device itself was a detailed scanner of the human, well, not human, of creatures' brains. So it was the most detailed scanner that he'd ever seen. And it was well beyond anything that most people at the time had seen that the Vanduul even possess. So there's a theory that this isn't actually a Vanduul technology, but technology from some unknown race that the Vanduul had acquired. We don't know what the Vanduul were doing with it, but it is Vanduul technology. So Ibrahim effectively figured out what it did, broke it down, and then reverse engineered it and created what is known as the Ibrahim sphere. Now, that is the technology that allows you to imprint, and basically is a soul copying device. But the thing that makes it different from a typical scanner is that once you've imprinted your imprint, your soul, as it were, your whole being, onto an Ibrahim sphere, it is connected to you through a unknown, faster than light substance kind of process known as interspace. So interspace is a thing that exists in reality. It is the thing that connects two quantum particles for quantum entanglement. It's a theorized existence. And so it works in the same way that quantum entanglement does. Yourself is connected to two sides. So being imprinted doesn't necessarily mean you're immortal. You need to have, and once you have an imprint, you also need to have the ability to be again. So a group called Bioticorp, which is famous for the Autodoc and a bunch of other stuff, we're developing a serum that effectively lets you regrow limbs and body parts and organs called Regeneration Serum. And they combined, in 2950, they combined the Ibrahim Sphere with Regeneration Serum and were able to regenerate people. Now, there are some limitations. You can't regenerate someone who's already alive, because that's something about that connection in interspace between two individuals. It's not it doesn't, you can't like regenerate with that. You can't imprint it onto a new body. You can't create an army of clones or any kind of like clones of people. It doesn't work like that. And the serum isn't clones, it's effectively human goo. It's like flash cloning somebody. So that's kind of how it works. In terms of its, what it really means in game, in game it means a couple of things. One, when you were attacking a pirate, say for instance, for a bounty, in the future, death is not preferable. Probably won't even be able to get credits for tackling down a bounty a bounty target, because imprint technologies have become so widespread because Addison, the latest Imperator, basically made it open source, so anybody with the technology can build an Ibrahim sphere and create regen serum. So it's so open source that even criminals have access to it. Not many, but for Star Citizen's game point of view, that's probably what's going to happen. Which will also allow for their vaunted Nemesis system, which they wanted to do, where like if you just attacked a group too much, then that one person you attacked will be able to remember that you attacked them and come after you. Which kind of makes more sense because they can regenerate. So capturing and like disabling and capturing somebody is how you are going to get bounties in the future. So that it has a huge impact, because a lot of people are like, oh, well, I can make shit tons of money by just spamming the trigger button and killing NPCs? Well, probably with Bounty Hunting 2.0, which is coming out in the next year or two, we will likely see that change. And that's an example of like how the lore impacts that. People have regen, so even in characters, so you can't kill a character dead. You couldn't find, say, Tisia Pachenko and kill her, and then she's dead. Like now she's not immortal, but she has regen. So at least narratively speaking, CIG can pull that out of their hat. Now there is a limitation to imprints. There's only a certain number of imprints you can do before you're done. It's called the IVS, the imprint viability score, because the thing that builds up, the thing that connects your brain with your imprint, your body, your soul with your imprinted soul, that also chronicles everything you do. So as you age, so does your imprint. As you experience trauma, so does your imprint. And it's pretty fucking traumatic to die. So the more you die, the more effectively trauma buildup in your body becomes, and filled with errors and other issues, because your human body isn't designed to be reborn every so often and all that kind of stuff. The psyche isn't designed to handle that. So eventually you kind of are no longer able to be imprinted because there's so much trauma that's built up in your body, in your imprint, that you just cannot reform. That's what the IVS score stands for. It lets you see how many imprints you have left. And it lets them in-game fudge a little bit, so like depending on how you die, depending on where you're regenning, where your imprint is, how good the imprint is, how old it is, will determine how much your IVS score gets hit. And in-game, that will mean that your character will eventually have permadeath, but you can die multiple times before you reach the permadeath stage. So that you have this ability to effectively you're not immortal, but you have a longer life to justify why you have regen. It's effectively kind of a really complicated way of doing regen, but it adds a whole bunch of stuff to the narrative. So sorry, that's a huge long story for that one, because that's stuff. But if you die outside of known space, it doesn't matter, because you have that connection. So you will always regen to your last place you have an imprint on. So the only way to like ghost somebody is what it's called, to give them the big death, as I like to call, is to destroy all of their imprints, which is impossible, because if your one imprint dies, it's destroyed, it'll go to the backup. It's kind of the way that works. Question: if you could only fly ships from one manufacturer with the exception of the parasite craft like RSI's Connie and Kruger P-52, why? I don't know what you're asking there, Dan Little. Are you saying, like, if you could fly ships from one manufacturer with the exception, so like exception of those two, what would I fly? I mean, Drake, but I'm a Drake fanboy. Hey, Joey. Hey, Jay Bird. We'll be seeing a board gamer and/or Zin in Lore, a podcast episode. I reached out probably this summer, because I have to talk with both of them. I reached out to Board and Zin and asked them if they wanted to come on, and Board said he was fine with it, and I think I'd have to reach out to Zin as well, but I'd love to do it. They're good people to talk to. Board's been on my Captain's Table podcast multiple times, so Zin would be perfect to come on and talk. We're gonna have a couple people. Tree's coming back. We're gonna record it Friday. We're gonna record another episode on medical technology with Tree. And I'll be bringing more guests on with Lore Citizen rather than just Al and Jail, though Al and Jail will be the main stuff. So, can we go over what we know about the Hadesians? I'm curious if there's much lore about them. We actually do have a lot of lore. It's all broken and scattered. We do know that the Hadesians, which is the residents of the Hades system, which they died off a million plus years ago. Or hundreds of thousands of years ago. So it was a very long time ago. They had a cataclysmic event. We know that they never discovered quantum travel, so they never left, at least as far as we know, they never left their system. They're not like a progenitor species. They just died out well before. They had colonized their entire solar system, and one of the planets that they had colonized was cracked in half, like literally something caused it to snap in half. There was either some sort of civil war or some sort of major climactic event. Lots of evidence of gunfire, of nuclear weapons destruction, nuclear and antimatter weapons being used that devastated the planets. Some planets are entirely covered with ecumenopolises. I can't say that. Like giant structures, hive cities, if you know it's 40K, that are all destroyed, and extensive underground networks. They had severely colonized themselves. We also know that there were likely differences between them because we actually have statues that survived, and of course, nuclear blasts had burned some of the images of these creatures into the concrete or into the stone of where they were. Their shadows, so we have an idea. But they generally look like they have a thorax with about anywhere between 4 and 8 limbs, plus a torso on top of that thorax with 2 grasping arms and a head. So we don't know if it's going to be like a spider, like a drider, or like a minotaur sort of situation where like it's just a torso sticking out, or if it was like the center. We don't know the locations of it. But we do know that they had various different legs, like more like spiderly legs, like little kind of things. So. What are some avenues you'd like them to take introducing lore into the game? Item descriptions, environments like Dark Souls, logs like Bioshock or Dead Space. Couple things. The first one I want them to do is conversations. I believe if they do conversations where the individual NPCs walk out to each other, greet each other, and then have conversations about the universe, that would add a lot of immersion to the game. And add a ton more of kind of like the lore aspects will be brought out a lot more. I do like logbooks. They're already starting to do that with like the Black Kite mission and some of the other missions. You can actually find logs of the crew and what happened. I'd also like to see Galactopedia update added, so you can actually access the Galactopedia in-game. But I think those sorts of small additions will be a big one. Of course, the big one I'd like to see is actual impactful story events. But if yes to both, or what other options can you think about? Kind of go, hey Darj, how you doing? So Darj has done this wonderful outlining. He also did the AstroHistorian logo. So that's Darionator. How you doing, Orion? My body must have imprinted a lot already. Yes, probably a lot of people have. That's a perfect explanation of everything I needed to understand about imprinting. Thank you, Vroom. No problem. And traumatic death can also have consequences. Your new copy isn't the same. Yeah, effectively. Like if you lose an arm, you die, you regen may not acknowledge the arm being there. Exactly. And so you'd have to get a replacement arm. You may have scars, which will return even though you regen, because again, your body imprints. So if you had a scar on your face, but you didn't die from that scar, and then you regen, that scar will return to your face based off of your own body's kind of imprint. It's like the opposite of Phantom Limb Syndrome, yeah. Question, on that note, do you think they will be adding some sort of respawn psychosis? And I would love to see that. Personally, and this is just because I think Star Citizen has a lot of a darker edge to it. It's supposed to be kind of shades of gray. It's not supposed to be entirely hopeless, but it's definitely got a darker tone to it. So I would love to see CIG kind of embracing that darker tone in some way, of having some sort of respawn psychosis or like a regen psychosis, something that would minorly affect players as they get more, their IVS scores gets lower and lower, so that they would encourage those players to then go back and try to, because there are going to be ways of you improving your IVS score, of getting back a little bit of your life through some sort of specialized treatments. This is something they want to do. So it's things that allow players to really grab onto the fact that they don't want their character to die. Those sorts of things would be, I think, an interesting way of doing it. I don't know exactly how they do it, because there's also a lot of ways that you don't want to like fuck with people too much. Did my imprint be altered and have upgrades like a penis extension? No, sadly. And that only manufacturer. Sorry about that. Can I complain? And that only that manufacturer. Drake's can hit you with everything. So, question. Essentially, mostly humans only die of old age. Now they do, because the imprint is only about 4 years old. No, 2 years old. It's only been around for 2 years. So. Question, how many known systems are there? 104? I want to say. The vast majority of them are human, but there are some systems we know about that we've never been there. Because we know, for instance, there's a connection to Orion from a system we haven't seen before. I think it's known as a lot of the unknown V systems are Vanduul systems. Because during the battle for Orion, a jump point opened up in the middle of Caliban, that no one knew about, and Vanduul started pouring out. So there are a couple of those systems which are unknown, and likely CIG will add more than that. Guys and gals, click the banner up top to ask a question. Yes, you can ask questions in sort of those as well. Did you see the new Bed Bananas video? I haven't, no. Also, what do the Xi'an and Vanduul do for Christmas Luminalia? I mean, the Vanduul I don't think celebrate it, and the Xi'an don't celebrate it either, as far as I know. The Xi'an, that'd be a question for Jail. I don't think they have much in terms of holidays as much. So, how you doing, Paul? Hey, Darj, how's it going? Could Ibrahim spheres come from the Krthok and were taken by the Vanduul? Possibly. Or another species we don't know about. When do you think freight missions will be introduced into the game? Posts earliest is next year, probably. All right. If the location of your imprint is stowed and destroyed, is it possible to respawn regen somewhere else? Yes, as long as you have a backup regen. But if you don't, I wanted to do planets with rotation Star Citizen. That's the plan at some point. Yeah, so I'm going to go through the question. If you do the Q&A stuff, I'll answer those questions first, and then if I'll go through some of this. Do the artifacts in game represent a clip of Star Citizen history lore? Yeah, all of them do. The UNE medal unification war medals is a representation of the unification wars. There's the Tavaran wars. There's the 6th Platoon Medal, which is awarded to the 6th Platoon UEE Marine 6th Platoon, who's kind of like the SEAL Team 6 of the Special Ops sort of group of the Marines. Is there anything in lore about cruisers and battle cruisers? Yes, several of them, but they're more older stuff. We don't know exactly how they look. They're just referenced in lore. Something like the Void Rats, I think, is a story if you can get a hold of it. It may have been a Jump Point only magazine stuff, but they talk about being out of a battle cruiser, operating out of a battle cruiser. So, hey, Anna yeah, all of I actually did an entire video on the artifacts, on what they mean. There's the Hadesian artifact, which could be the key to a super weapon or a toilet seat. We have no idea. Do we know how much about the Min system? Yes, we do. Let me pull up what I have about the Min system. So what we do know about the Min system is that, for those of you who don't know, Min has no sun. It is a rogue planet that is stuck between two jump points, or multiple jump points. It's a gas giant. It has multiple moons around it. And we know that the Min system was discovered early. I actually did a little bit of research into this because the Min system was discovered at the time period that I'm writing the next complete history of Star Citizen lore. I'm almost done with it. I'll be finishing with it today in terms of the script, and then I'll record the audio, and then my editor will take it, and Uri will get it done in the next 2 or 3 weeks. And then it'll be posted to Patreons probably by the beginning of the year. And I'm also working on the next part because it's complicated. There's some weird stuff from the lore team that I had to kind of piece together. But we don't know how Min exists. There's a lot of research into Min by scientists about why it exists the way it does, but we don't have a full understanding of it. UEE versus Corpos for control of Stanton. Who wins? UEE, well, it depends. The UEE has unlimited power. Corpos don't have Bengal carrier groups, which will literally devastate planets from orbit. So I think if the UE wanted to control, they would destroy the entirety of Stanton in probably days. All right. Assuming CIG reduced the systems available at launch, which systems do you think were needed to the lore without a huge rewrite? Is Solterra needed for launch? So here's the thing. Star Citizen is in a unique position in that they can, with their lore, they can just not have to explain why those systems aren't accessible for lore. They aren't accessible to you. That's all. I don't think they're going to. Here's the thing. I don't think they're going to launch Star Citizen in the traditional way. I think they'll get to a point where they would normally launch the game, but then they'll just not wipe. They'll still be in beta, they'll just not wipe, and they'll continue going through. And then when they reach the point where they have all the systems they want to for initial exploration in, then they'll say, hey, we're launched, but they'll have already been launched for several years before then. I think the top opens up, but when you click ask questions, like it just clicks the comment underneath. Oh, some other people have been able to answer it. If you could introduce any alien species to lore and make an alien species in lore, what species would you choose? I mean, I still believe that the Kurthok are an alien AI race, but I would definitely say an AI race. A benevolent AI race. Not a benevolent, but like crotchety, get off my lawn. Like not an AI race that wants to explore and or even conquer the galaxy. Just like they want to be left the fuck alone. Hope you enjoyed the holidays. Anyway, in your lore research, did you ever learn something directly? Did you ever ask something directly from the narrative team? Did you manage to get Dave Haddock on Lore Citizen? You did manage to get him. Did you ever ask something directly from the lore team? I mean, yeah, a lot. I mean, Dave Haddock is mostly who I talked to, but Jeremy Melul, I think his name is. He's a new writer. He's been doing some cool stuff. So, do the artifacts in game represent a clip of sources? Yes, North. I already talked about that. Yes, they do. They actually do represent history. After playing 318.ptu, are you more confident that CIG can pull their vision off for a few large shards of the whole world? Of course. It's the issues. I know a lot of people are having issues with the game, but the issues are not catastrophic issues. They're not like the game's not functioning. It's just annoyances that need to be dialed and fixed a little bit. It's gonna take them some time, obviously, but it's not like the end of the world. Let me boost my camera up a little bit. I think it's a little bigger video. A bit brighter. No. I want to be pale, but don't want to be completely dark. Not quite lore, but what's your opinion on the tier 2 beds to keep their respawn capabilities? Me and Tree are going to disagree on this a bit significantly. I think they should, but I think there should be, because of the way they introduced a regeneration, that tier 2 beds are going to be emergency regen only. Effectively, they're designed, the regen serum that you have in there is designed to repair your limbs, so it has enough to maybe respawn one person. Because for people who don't know, regen serum is going to be the thing you need to respawn. So a tier 2 bed is likely not going to have enough storage for regen serum as well as other things. So if you wanted to have multiple respawns, you would need to carry that in your cargo, in your inventory, and then reinstall it every time it's being used. Whereas a tier 1 bed would have enough space for plenty of regen serum to allow for multiple respawns, regens if need be. So I think that's the balance of it. And of course, it's also going to be a lower quality of regen compared to the tier 1, so your IVS score is going to take a bigger hit. It's more of an emergency, like, oh shit button hit, and it gives a meaningful choice. Do you set your respawn to your tier 2 bed on your Carrack for an emergency respawn, or do you set it back in Stanton or another like nice hospital where your IVS score won't get a hit as much, but you lose everything on your ship? Stuff. Question, what are the chances they ever implement cybernetic implants? High, very high. very fucking high. Obviously, they don't want to last for one regen and lost on death. I'm thinking of a night vision implant, etc. Oh yeah, for sure. Almost certainly CIG will add that because again, regen adds that. You regen, you've lost your implants, so you're gonna have to rebuy them entirely from scratch. What's pushing the Vanduul to inside the UE territory? Weren't they semi-dormant outskirts of known universe? We don't know exactly where their origins are. All we know is they showed up in Orion. The thing about Orion is that it's a very old system. It was discovered like 200, 300 years before it was invaded. So we know that, you know, nomadic species or nomadic peoples and species as well, will tend to go in cycles. They don't like go just randomly everywhere. They tend to find places that are good and then work in a cycle around different seasons or whatever. That whole process is cyclical, and unless something interrupts it, they'll continue it. So it's likely the Vanduul being more of a nomadic, they had some sort of cycle and then it was interrupted. So we don't know exactly which one's pushing out of it. I think the narrative would be the Krthok. That should be the narrative of it, but it might be another species, which would be an interesting one. Not a question, but I like your storytelling videos. Thank you, Riddle Time. Question, is there an Area 51 system? Yes, there are two, actually. One of them is the Kronos system, Synth World. No one goes to Synth World. You don't go to Kronos. Kronos is, do not go to Kronos. It is where the Klingons live. No, but Kronos is a system in Star Citizen where Synth World was secretly being developed post-Meso era, and it is highly classified. No one goes there. There's also the Killian system that's more of like kind of like White Sands. And then there's a couple of other places, I can't remember the name of them, which are, even Odin. Odin has some secret test labs on it as well. So there's this Area 51 type things sprinkled all over the verse. Hey, Scott, AJ Bird. How does CIG place the players into the lore? Aren't we supposed to be wealthy citizens, being able to own a ship, skip the retrace on corporation-owned planets? Rat race on corporation-owned planets? Sort of. So players are, I would say, middle class to upper middle class. The thing is that ships are expensive as shit, but you can think of them as like, not everyone needs a ship. In the lore, if you live on Terra or Stanton, and you say live on like Area 18, you probably don't need a ship. Most of your job is done inside the system. You kind of work in where you need to do. If you're working in Terra, you probably aren't leaving the planet. And they have, you know, decent public transportation. The only reason why you need to own a ship is if you worked on the frontier or in a more rural area where your ship was your means to get to work. You can think of it as like how people who live in like Colorado or Alaska will often have Piper Cubs, like very small, lightweight aircraft to be able to get from place to place because they have to go large distances and there's just not infrastructure supporting their abilities. So ships aren't necessarily super like expensive. They are, but people will fly ships who are poor, who just need to do it to go to work. Players owning ships as a means of making money makes them into the upper middle class, yeah. That's going to be Dark System, yeah. Question, are there ships we know about but don't know how they look? Several. There's the Bearcat, which is one of my favorites. There's the Osprey, the Anvil Osprey, and the Anvil Destroyer, I think is another one. There are, it's the Wildcat. Yeah, the Aegis Wildcat. There's a couple of ships like that. There's the ship that crashed the Olympus, the UES Olympus, is actually not a Bengal, it's a different ship. How can they justify the small earning professions at the start without breaking the wealthy citizen status? Because you're not really wealthy, necessarily. You have a ship, but you don't necessarily have money. Question, how much lore is there in Titan Suit? Not much. Almost nothing right now, because I don't think they've finished putting it in, though. This is the question of separate window in the window, different chat. Yeah, it's a difference in the window. Do we know which in-game ships are in production versus only available for surplus and used? For example, are all Avengers surplus, or is Aegis still manufacturing some? They're manufacturing some. The only ones that are surplus are right now are the Vandal ships, and they're in limited quantities. So basically, any ship that is limited quantities is surplus and limited manufacturing. That's their justification for in lore. But for instance, Perseus there's probably some surplus Perseuses that are floating around, but most of them are new manufacturing. They just are limited in quantity. I love that the ideas for respawn on T2. Thanks. No problem, Pro. What is the most famous decorated warship in the UE? Oh, High Night Cub. That we know of? Probably the Warhammer. There are not a lot of individual ships that we know of. There are two that we know of, which are the UES Stanton, which is the Idris that's in Squadron 42, and the Warhammer, which is the Javelin that is defending the Stanton system currently. That's the one that goes around the Invictus holidays, so you can go on through it and explore it, and it's the one that was available during Xenothreat. We know the Warhammer has extensive history and decorations. It was there at the fall of Caliban, melted its superstructure, firing so much during the fall, single-handedly holding off the Vandal fleet to allow for civilians and the rest of the military personnel to escape. That just shows you how dangerous javelins are. It was available during the invasion of Nexus. It fought in many wars on the Vandal front, and of course involved in Xenothreat attacks. So. In the realm of possibility, is it in the realm of possibility RSA would publish Zeus 7 or similar version of the first quantum drive ship? I'd love to see it, but I don't think they will. I think it would be great for like a kind of like retroactive. Do you think Soul will be the first, be in the first launch of the game? Yes, but that's completely different for a reason. Different reasons why. We don't go to Ravenhold Kronos anymore. If they're tier 2, if they can bring back, if you have a body. Tier 1, if you only nothing can do in regeneration. We'll see. Questions: what are the average wage of the middle to lower class UE citizens? It's hard to tell right now because CIG hasn't fleshed out the economy. But middle to lower class would likely be around the same price as a starting mission. So about 1,000 UEC. I would say maybe 1,000 UEC a day. So 1,000 UEC a day, which would mean about 5,000 UEC a week, which would be about what 20,000 UEC a month. So, inflation, but yeah, about that. You love 317.4 elevators, 318 get the fuck out of here. All right. Who here loves Star Citizen elevators? We all love. That's the great real question for lore. Regarding ships, how is that? How is it that there isn't any more ancient models roaming around? Do you think, like Jared talked about during ISC, that we'll be able to refurbish, salvage, repair old ships? Well, the reason why we don't have them around is because CIG doesn't want to make them. Because they can't even make the ships they have currently. Like, the reason why, if there was to be a lore reason why, it would be because Salvage became a massive hit. There was a huge popularity of Salvage that struck off in the 2930s because of a reclaimer discovered an ancient 22nd century colony ship, which is before quantum travel, that had been thought to have been lost. Possibly, this is a big one, that may actually have been the first attempt at extrasolar settlement, or it could have just screwed up and missed its mark and ended up in deep space, or in a different system as a result. But it found a rare 22nd century colony ship, and they made millions overnight. And now suddenly everyone was like, oh, I can find this buried treasure effectively and make money. Drake said, yes, you can. Here's our revamped VLT3. We're calling it the Vulture. Go make your money off of it. Then a bunch of vultures made a bunch of discoveries, and then this huge wave of salvage kicked off. So if I was to use a lore justification, they've just been picked clean, because everyone has been wanting to try to get as much as they can. So a lot of older ships have been picked clean. On top of that, Stanton is very, very new. It was only discovered in the 2850s. So there wouldn't be many older ships around in Stanton, just because it's not an older system. But I'd also love to be able to find older ships and repair them. Like, I'd love for them to take the old models of the ships that were in the game, like the old Gen 1 Hornets and 300s, and then put them in the ship as the older models of those ships as well. But is there any kind of central hub for academia? Something like the Maester Citadel in the Game of Thrones? Yes! It's called the Redder system. Redder system is, when it was discovered, I believe 50% of all land was set aside for educational purposes of some way, shape, or form. So there are multiple universities on the multiple planets of the Redder system, including Quasi, which is kind of a top secret research university. Lots of think tanks. Biotic Corp is headquartered out of Redder. So it is like the place where all research and development is done. It's this big system dedicated to knowledge. Do you think players will be able to QT freely out of a system and discover POIs tens of millions of kilometers away outside of a system's boundary? CIG would say yes. I would say no, likely, because CIG would have to generate that. And I think they would, but I think if they did that, it would have to be something special, not just a random aurora that made it all the way out there. But the CIG has, in multiple bits of the lore, talked about the Oort clouds of various systems. So it would make sense to be able to travel out into the Oort cloud of, say, Stanton, which is kind of the outer kind of ice layer that exists on the edge of our solar system. And it should exist on many other solar systems as well. So you may be able to discover stuff out there. I think so, but I don't think you'll be able to go several light years out of Stanton just through quantum. I don't think CIG is ever going to, because CIG has said before, oh yeah, sure, there's nothing, it's one big map, so it won't actually be a bunch of room systems. I think that's going to change. There is definitely going to be a bunch of room systems. It's going to look a lot like Elite Dangerous in the sense that you have rooms that you then transition to other rooms. The difference is that those transitions points are going to be set to jump points, and those rooms will have no cap on them. Given the charter, why would Crusader Industries produce unguided bombing ships? Because the money. They like money. And the UAE wanted them to build unguided bombing ships. Augustin Lowe is dead. He's long dead and buried. He's no longer in control. And the current CEO purchased Stanton 2, I think. It's Stanton 2. I always get it and R-Corp mixed up. I think it's Stanton 2. Might be Stanton 3. I think it's Stanton 2. So, I don't think, what's her name? Kelly Kaplan is as dedicated to giving all the money to charity as Augustin Lowe was. I think she's more interested in efficiency and money, and so if the money comes, she'll do what she can. What is the backdrop? This is Redder. This is Redder University. Hey, Uri. He's for those who don't know, Uri the Smoke is the editor who does all of my a lot of my shorts for the Astro Pub, but also does all of the complete history of Star Citizen videos. So, yeah, the Orc Cloud made sense. Luminous Travel, not probably not. Yeah. God, it's already been 45 minutes. This is only going to be like an hour or two, so probably maximum 2 hours would be my guess. Knowing humanity, will we have romance with Xi'an gals? No. No. Yes and no. I'm sure humans would attempt it, but the cultural differences alone would be tremendous, and there is no interspecies breeding. You cannot create a hybrid human Xi'an through doing the stuff. This just wouldn't work. They're not the same DNA and all that kind of stuff. So, but there are references to Tavaran being raised by humans. There are references of Tavaran and humans having romantic relationships. There's even the story of the Gemini twins, who were two orphans, a Tavaran and a human, who were orphans on the streets of New Junction in Low. And when the Tavaran made a gun for their protection, the human was like, hey, this is a great idea. Let's make and sell these because people want ballistic guns. And so they eventually formed Gemini, the weapons company. But she hid her Tavaran brother, as it were, because they were effectively siblings. So, what is the lore around concierge citizen? Since there's already an Aston game like Orison about concierge. It's called the Chairman's Club. We don't know a lot about the lore. It's just kind of like a fancy Mile High Club sort of thing. It's just a club that you get for spending a lot of money. In the meantime, while we're waiting for more questions and such, because I think I've completely caught up with all the questions, as far as I know. Oh, there you go. Pyro first, then Nyx. When Croshaw? A while. The logical progression I think CIG will do is Castra after Nyx, and then Odin whenever that becomes available, then Hadrian, then Terra. I think that's the logical progression they'll do. Magnus, then Hadrian, then Terra. I think Terra is the beta. Almost certainly Terra is the we're launching into beta, here's Terra. That's almost certainly what they'll do. This music reminds me of The Sims. This is from Utho Reily, called Curriculum. It's fun being here and getting the lore snippets from anything and everything. Hey, feel free to let me know. Everyone clicking that thumbs up button helps you. Yeah, it helps a lot. There is also you haven't watched the latest video because maybe YouTube hasn't given it to you, but check out the latest video because there's a special surprise at the end. First off, it's about Luminalia, the history of it and where it comes from, but why does Anvil have less capital ships than Aegis? That's a good question. I have no idea. In theory, they should have more capital ships, simply because, in the lore at least, Anvil is replacing Aegis for much of its stuff. I still have a theory that we will either see a gunship or a frigate that will replace the somewhere between a patrol ship, somewhere between a Perseus and an Idris, which will replace the Idris, which is designed to replace the Idris, because it was supposed to be replaced a while ago and hasn't been. So, and I think it's going to be done by Anvil. But I don't think CIG wants to tackle that stuff until they're already caught up with all their backlog, which is funny because they also released the Galaxy. All right, what's the airspeed velocity of an unladen Tavaran? One. God damn it, I had a joke first, but I can't find it. I was going to say Elysium or the other place. Branagh. Elysium or Branagh Tavaran? That's the question. Do you think CIG will let you get inside the installation in systems like Castra, or will it be completely off limits? Oh, I'm sure they will let you get inside the system. I think it'll depend on your reputation, though. It's not an Avenger, I don't think. No, it is an Avenger, yeah. Are there theoretically other aliens who are residents in Stanton or just travelers? Yes, there's actually, in lore, there is a consulate, a Xi'an consulate on ArcCorp. When we found that out through a lore translation, me and Jail both went, Where consulate? Area 18 has a Xi'an consulate. Where? Gib. Honestly, Drac, I think it's the issue with them not doing Anvil stuff is, again, down to CIG going. In terms of they're already behind on so many capital ships, so. What position of the CDF on what is the position of CDF on organization of the UE? Are we militia, government volunteers, etc.? The way it works is you are a government contractor working for volunteer government contractor working for the advocacy. You're effectively a deputized volunteer in the advocacy. The advocacy being the law enforcement arm of the UEE. So you can work directly with the advocacy under an advocacy agent, but you cannot just go off and do actions on your own. There is, unless you are instructed to by an agent, which is why you have the call to arms, which is effectively the agent giving you carte blanche to take down hostiles or take down criminals, those with criminal status will give you some money for it. When the pie? I don't know, man. I want some pizza pie. How do you think CIG will handle scaling down Seoul? Do you think they'll just shrink down the continents and trim empty areas and like having Houston and New York City, but cutting areas in between? I think they'll just prevent you from traveling there. I think you will only have a very narrow path that you can travel to for Earth, which will only be New York. New York, Shanghai, London, Frankfurt. You'll have a couple of landing zones, but those areas will be very different. They'll be modeled after what exists in those areas, but they'll be very different. Like likely with New York, you'll probably be able to go down what is today Wall Street, wherever the UN building is, because that's where the UN building is now the Senate, the UEE Senate building, so which has been completely changed over, so it'd be that area. But I think it'll be much more. You'll probably see it much more like a slimmed down version of GTA, and you almost certainly will have very strict flight. You won't be able to go fly through Grand Canyon and shit like that. I think CIG is going to tremendously limit your ability to do those things. Because remember, soul was not envisioned with you being able to fly to it, in like Earth. You were originally supposed to have a cutscene between you flying into the, like flying to the planet and then landing, similar to like say Freelancer. And since they added atmospheric exploration, they're almost certainly going to limit your ability. Which question, Jordan? I think I did. Oh, I didn't see that one. No, I don't know how that one. Oh, I didn't even see tractor beam tech. Oh, I got good stuff up there. All right, is there any lore about tractor beam tech that seems like an insanely important scientific discovery? No, but almost certainly it happened in the 23rd or 24th century. But it is important, but probably not as important as quantum, because quantum travel is effectively warp travel. And it uses the concept of negative mass, that is the Alcubierre drive, that concept. Quantum particles create that negative mass, which allows you to, the quantum particles, which is it's just a generic term for a type of particle that holds a shit ton of negative energy or negative mass. Has major effect on mass and like that. So it's likely similar to that, or at least an offshoot of that technology, being able to manipulate gravity, as it were. Do we have any major theme parks like Disney and Star Citizen where we get to use them? I'd hope so. Not that I know of. There almost certainly are, though, in the universe. I almost certainly believe that there are some large areas which are reserved for theme parks. Though I don't know offhand if there are. And CIG wants to do things like museums. So if they do museums, they'll do a theme park of some kind. Probably wouldn't be as complicated as a planetary system. Questions. Are there theoretically other aliens who are... Okay, I already saw that one. Okay. Question. I think this one got buried, but is there a lore about tractor beam tech? Yeah, I just went over that, yeah. Didn't even see that over there. How come YouTube only? Because I wanted to make this a special stream for the YouTube audience on the AstroHistorian, because I don't usually stream from the AstroHistorian page. So, but you should check me out on the AstroPub, youtube.com/theastropub live and twitch.tv/theastropub live, where we do this quite frequently. I'll be doing that tomorrow and Friday, usually Thursday through Sunday. We do a bunch of streams. So if you wanted more stuff like this, come join us tomorrow. And that location. Oh, Darsh, okay. You hit level 50 yet in Dark Tide? Yes, I did with my Zealot, and I'm trying to work up for my Guardsman, but I haven't been able to do a lot of stuff. PTU goes live. PTU goes live. My thoughts on when it goes live? CIG has stated it's going to be January. I don't think it's going to go live until probably more like March, February, March. Based off its current status. You think we could ever join the UE Marines be selected? Nope. Maybe if they do a single player campaign, which would almost certainly be a nice little small short 20-hour experience they could sell after they get Squadron 42 done. Tree has this belief that it's going to be a story following 6 Platoon. That'd be a great little short, like $20, $30 game edition that CIG could spend like a year or two doing with Squadron 42 assets. It'd be nice, but not in-game, no. Because Marines, you don't join the Marines choose you to join. Steve. My name is Paul. How's it going, Gaming Channel? What's the biggest underground or mafia-like organization in lore? The Otoni Syndicate. The Otoni Syndicate, or the Oratani Syndicate, I can't remember how you say it. They're everywhere. They're kind of like the Sicilian mafia, in that they have branches all over the world, all over. Like Sicilian mafia has like multiple branches all over the world. The Ottoni Syndicate has branches everywhere. Every system has an Ottoni Syndicate branch, but those branches are run by their individual leaders, and then once they have established control, they get a seat at a table of the larger syndicate, which then kind of makes decisions on where to grow and what to do. So. Does CIG foresee the UE as a potential organization that we can gain reputation with or even join? Yes, almost certainly. You can almost certainly join, not necessarily join the UE, but you can definitely gain kind of reputation where you can be selected as kind of like a contractor. You can think of yourself as a government contractor for various different types. Will you be participating in the holiday jump town? Maybe. I'm a little burned out on like in-game stuff because 3.18 is going to wipe everything. And 3.18 is so buggy. So we'll see. Yeah, if you use the Ask Me Anything, if you get to the very top of the chat, you'll see a little clink that you can say Ask Me Anything. Put that. The Marines chose him. This would happen to your grandpa. There we go. Hey, Skeeto. The next big video, by the way, that we're gonna do, obviously the next complete history will be out next month at some point. If you're Patreon, it'll be out sooner, but for everybody else, it'll be after that. The next video I'm going to do is for the beginning of the new year. I'm going to be doing a video on the cult that exists, the only religion, the human religion. It's kind of a little philosophical cult that exists in Star Citizen, called the Church of the Traveler. I'll be doing a full expose on that. And then I'm going to do a video on the Gladiator, the ship that was born from a scam. That clickbait should write itself. We'll be holding a Travelers Day celebration stream. No, not this year. What is meat? Huh? It's protein-based animal life forms. I don't know. Do you think a Battlestar class ship could make its way into lore? I want a Galactic or Pegasus one since they're already added to a Cyclone fighter. Yeah, it's called it's called the Retribution. The UES Retribution. Doesn't look like the Battlestar, but it's effectively that. Or the Bengal. Would you be open to react to the new Bed Bananas vid live? Yeah, tomorrow probably on the Astropub. And we see a Lore Citizen podcast episode recorded live. Several times it sounds like there's a video aspect. We don't see it on YouTube. So if you are a Patreon, the video aspects are actually up there for Patreons, which is the raw input is on Patreon. We could do it live, but likely not with videos because we tend to do it at odd hours. It wouldn't be a scheduled thing. We might be able to do something like a live Q&A, but again, I wouldn't probably do videos. Do you think UE will get divided like Rome? Yes. I mean, is beef or beef flavored protein product? Beef is most probably not even beef. It's probably or locusts. It's probably Kazi Grazer meat. Because Kazi Grazer is the space cow. It's the most common meat source in the UEE. That Bed Bananas video is pretty neat. Pretty sweet. Oh, cool. I'll have to take a look at it. I know Bed Bananas is the one who did the video on escaping prison, right? Did the prison escape one that blew up? When they open the Vanduul, Xi'an, or Tavaran systems, will it actually be rendered in detail or just challenging to get into, or will it not be rendered artificially blocked? I mean, there's no reason for them not to have the systems accessible like any other system. You'll just be constantly interdicted, or everywhere you go, you'll find alien species. There is one that is connected to Pyro, which is Virgil. I would almost guarantee you that'll be the first Vanduul system we'll get after the release of Squadron. So, do Tavaran have a cloaca? I don't know. All right. Jock Cop asks, this year was a year of Drake. What manufacturer is getting the highlight next year? RSI, hopefully. Hi, Paul. Hope you stayed warm and Merry Christmas. Thank you, Argos Mage, and thank you for being a member. Did we get a new member and I didn't see it? Okay, let me see who got the new member. Who joined as a member? Oh, it was Vroom Vroom. Thank you so much for becoming a Astro Historical supporter there. Thank you for joining a member. We do have a membership here on YouTube if you want to join to help out. There's not really much bonuses to it. It's just, thank you. Hey, I'll try to give ad-free experiences to them, but I think you get ad-free experiences if you're a member. I don't know if that's true or not. I know it's on Twitch, so. But, and maybe some early access and stuff like that, but Patreons is where you want to go to get the most experience and like the early access and all of these sorts of things, so. Go back to live chat question. I'm very new to Star Citizen lore. Anything important I should know? The UNE, the UPE, the First Tavaran War, the Second Tavaran War, and the Mezzers. If you know those 5 things, you look up those 5 things, then you almost certainly will know everything there is to know in terms of the basic output of what the universe looks like in Star Citizen. The UNE, the formation of the UNE, the UPE, and its formation. Not so much. Those two are kind of similar. The First Tavaran War is huge. The Rise of the Mezzers, the Second Tavaran War, and the Fall of the Mezzers. Those are really the things you need to know to understand the background. Question, is there slavery in UEE, unofficial or blue collar, like Hurston employee? Slavery is technically illegal in the UEE. However, there is plenty of, Hurston's probably the most egregious example, where they have these things called lifetime contracts. So when you signed up to work for Hurston Dynamics, you sign up to work there for your entire life. And no, regenning doesn't count. You're still legally alive until you can't no longer regen. You're stuck working for Hurston. They even have that in the announcements at Maria, Pure of Heart. They're like, no, you still have to work. And if you go to the regen terminal, like the actual terminal of the regen, there's actually a sign that says regeneration is does not consider it the same life. You can't get out of your contracts like that. Tell me a ghost story. Ah, okay. Radar Echo, I'll give you this very one. Let me turn this off a little bit. So, there was a ship that was exploring right after Hades had been discovered. This ship was a very rudimentary discovery ship. It was called the Vara. The Vara was sent into Hades to explore, I believe, the 2nd planet. Everything seemed good. The captain was constantly sending updates back through the jump point to the private contractors who had been footing the bill for this exploration. And the last communication was how the captain was excited about sending down their first EVA team to the surface of the second planet. And then nothing after. Reports stopped being sent. Eventually, there was a search party sent out to the Hades system to try to see what happened to the Vara. And it was never discovered. Disappeared without a trace. No wreckage, nothing. Completely disappeared. And ever since then, you've traveled through the Hades system. It's said that you will get a distress call from the Vara. But if you answer it, you will find the ship has been long dead, its crew frozen. However, the longer you stay there, the higher the chances the crew will return to life and attack you, attempting to take over your ship to be brought back to the world of the living. And the only way you can protect yourself is to dress up like a crew member of the Vara. That's not to mention the creepy blue dude who shows up in people's cargo holds. There you go. It's a ghost story. Since I've been furnishing a new home, I got me thinking, how many items in your home are from IKEA? I would say like 10, all about. Question, do you think CIG will ever mention real religions other than the ones that are around various forms? Space Catholicism is a personal favorite aesthetic of mine. I'd hope so. There is mentions of Christianity, because Crusader is actually formed as a Christian company. It wasn't formed under Augusta and Lowe as a Christian company, but it was before it was called Seraphim Systems, and it was overtly Christian. So, will there be no respawns in Vandal systems? Unless you have a ship there, probably not. There's almost certainly not going to be a respawn bed in the Vandal systems. Question, will we be able to infiltrate the UE Marine base, or will it be just blocked as a kill box? Almost certainly you'll be able to infiltrate it. CIG does not like to do the whole arbitrary kill boxes and stuff like that if they can get away with it. I think there will be some exceptions like Sol Earth, just because it was never designed, so it's too complicated for them to deal with. But almost certainly you'll be able to go to the home world of the Marines, even though it's defended by a fleet the entire time, which will shoot on sight. If you can slip by them, I'm sure you'll be able to get there. There's nothing there. It's an ice ball with an underground base. But where's the link to the spirit giveaway? That is on the Astro Pub spirit giveaway. This is the TheAstroHistorian. It's a different channel. That'll be over on the Astro Pub channel. What if you refuse to work for the Hurstons? We'll make you work. You think you go to prison or you become destitute? What do you think the CIG will do with the Ortoni system, if anything? The possibilities of something like that fascinate me. It's definitely be an in-game event. It'll be a major one. Ninja Waffle, what do you think CIG will do with the Ortoni system? I see Ryan and Ellison in the same person. Okay. I feel like Warhammer 40k already has Space Catholicism covered. Yeah. Bears for Jesus. Are Templars in the game? No, not as far as I know. Another new member. Darth Cat, thank you so much for becoming a member. Sorry, I'm looking at the Q&A stuff, and it doesn't show me when a new member comes through with the Q&A stuff. It doesn't show me on my my streaming software either. But thank you for becoming a member. I can't wait to see this Larsai Minor. Me too. Looking forward to it. Are there any lore explanation for the lack of fauna animals so far, or are we just waiting for them to be added? Just waiting for them to be added. For Microtech, it's pretty easy because there's just not a lot of creatures that can survive the extreme temperatures of Microtech. So, but they're waiting for things like the Boreal Stalker to be added. There's also an infestation of blind Oni crabs in Hurston, but Hurston's also a ravaged environment, so there's probably not many living creatures that still exist other than those that have been transplanted. It's also important to note that there's most places aren't actually habitable, so like most places we would like our corp obviously wouldn't have any creatures, and there aren't many creatures that exist in Crusader except for the Stormwall, but there's probably a small subspecies. We know there's like aerial plankton that lives in the atmosphere of Crusader. So there's probably some small like ecosystem that exists in Crusader, but most of it is just they haven't added them to the game yet. That's all. Has a zombie-like virus happened in lore? No, but I'm sure it will. What's my favorite alien system? Bacchus is my favorite alien system, but that's because I'm a Banu guy. Love the Banu. Because it's where the Banu flotilla is. Pretty cool. No Twitch stream. Twitch stream happens tomorrow. This is a special YouTube-only stream for the TheAstroHistorian. So only for people who like the lore stuff. So we'll be back tomorrow, though, for the Twitch stream. Well, the ArcCorp has the Metropolitan Climbing Turtle. Duh. Yes. Question: are you expecting new 318 alien bugs to become important at some point? Yes, those stone bugs. They'll be the first. They've already stated they'll be the first creatures that will be added to the game as a living creature shortly. Well, not 318, but I wouldn't be surprised if 319 has them. Do you think we could see an event in the future where workers on Hurston take over the player's help? I can force one to happen, but maybe. I think CIG will have to. What'll determine a lot of events is how much time does CIG have, and how much effort they're willing to put in to it specifically. More lore stuff, that's me, I'm staying. There we go. Tomorrow we'll do our typical office hours. It'll be a little earlier than our normal office hours, simply because I have time to, but... Besides simple contractor like jobs, binding, delivery, bounty, etc., what will players be able to have in-game businesses with NPC customers? Yeah, for sure. You'll be able to work for specific groups. You'll be able to join organizations and companies. You just won't be able to join the UE. They haven't introduced the new, fully introduced the new in-game org system. For those of you who don't know, the org system is popular because a lot of people are like, oh, well, it's the player orgs. It's not actually the player orgs. The org system is designed for NPC orgs. And that same system is going to be used for players, but it's at first designed for NPC orgs. So you'll be able to join something like the Rust Society or the Wayfarers Club or Hurston Dynamic Security, those sorts of things. Current track is called Curriculum. It's from Utho Reily, who hasn't done many music since May of this year, so I hope he's okay. Are the new stone bugs just dead Ranta? No, I think they're trying to separate the Ranta from the stone bugs. The original description of the Ranta was that it was an isopod-like character, which is exactly what the stone bugs are. So I think the Ranta will get probably got a redesign, and the stone bugs are replacing the Ranta in terms of that aesthetic. I wouldn't be surprised if the dung that we see in caves gets turned into stone bug dung rather than Ranta dung. We'll see. Do any aliens have pets equivalent to cats or dogs? That's a good question. I don't think so. Maybe the Xian, but I haven't heard specifically of anything like that. Your lore stuff on Star Citizen is best. Thank you, Tech Zero. Thank you for watching. How many planets would actively habitable have Earth weather? Well, actually, habitable and have Earth weather. Not a ton, but there will be more than a few. ArcCorp, Microtech, and Hurston all will have that. There'll be some of that weather in some of the pyro systems, but we don't know to the extent. Castra almost certainly will have it. Every system that has a major landing zone will likely have something like that. Yar has a landing zone, but it's like a desert. So the question is more, and see as you want to add weather on places that even don't have landing zones. It's just a matter of what weather and how. Do cats still exist in 2952? Yeah. Banu have pet humans. That is true. Have they ever mentioned anything like us having cats or dogs on our own personal ships? Yes, it was an entire stretch goal to have pets. And they mentioned like exotic alien pets and also regular cats and dogs. Because during the crowdfunding campaign, I believe it was Chris Roberts had a dog, and he sadly passed away only a couple months after the crowdfunding campaign started. So they decided to do a little of that. So yes, there's flat cats or flow pets. Yeah, flow pets is what it's called. Flow pets. I would call them flat cats because I think they mentioned it, but I don't know if it exists. But flow pets exist on Ellis. They're a species of high gravity cat-like creatures that live underwater that they're called flow pets. Kind of they squish. Flat cats is a long-running. It's kind of like the Wilhelm scream in sci-fi. The term flat cat has been like as like a high gravity cat that's been squished is a term that exists in multiple science fiction universes. Where are the children so far in lore? Can we have some in the workforce? They had them in the workforce. That's the entire thing of what Anthony Tanaka was about. It used to be so easy to explain this because it's just like go to Nyx, or not go to Nyx, go to why am I blanking on the name now? Levski. Go to Delamar and Levski. That's a big statue. Children labor is kind of outlawed. So, laser saber in the verse. When? I hope soon. Probably not lightsaber, but I'd love to see a laser sword of some kind. You just want a droid? There was supposed to be a repair bot that was supposed to be given to you as part of a reward. So I think they want to do something like that. Will we have pet penguins? Probably not, though I'd love to see penguins living on Microtech. We'll still be live for another about 30 minutes or so, and call it the special stream. Now, I also want to know y'all's thoughts if you like stuff like this. I can do this just exclusively for the lore every so often, probably not all the time, at most once a month. I wanted to do this as kind of an experiment, end of the year, wrap up. People have more time, going to talk and that sort of thing, and people have questions. There's a lot of people I know who have questions about the lore because Star Citizen's lore is impenetrable. there are some basic facts you can know, but simply because Star Citizen is a game that doesn't have any of its lore in game means that it's very much like Destiny 1, where a lot of people just don't care. And didn't care until Destiny 2, when the lore was actually added to the game itself. That a lot of people, you know, because obviously there's a lot of information, there's a lot of story in Star Citizen that's told by atmospheric storytelling. But I know that they're not planning on doing that forever. They want to add more lore into the game. But as a result, a lot of people don't even know that this game has in-depth lore. I know the Vandal use melee weapons. I feel like I heard the Tavaran using melee weapons too. Yep, it's called the... I forgot the name of it. But it's like a think of it as a pole arm that's a hatchet sized. It's got an axe head, it's got a spike, and it's got like a blunt end on the back. So you've got a hammer, an axe, and a spear all in one that you can use. It's traditional, a bakul is what its name is. It's a traditional Tavaran weapon. Is Pico real? Yes. What is the status of the artificial intelligence? How intelligent programs are in intelligence in the universe? So AI is complicated because AI is outlawed in the Star Citizen universe. But by AI, I mean actual AI. The AI they have now is effectively what we have. What we call AI in our world today is what Star Citizen has, but to its most extreme examples. Learning machines that are designed to do one task very fucking well and incredibly detailed. So like the IFCS system, the system that controls all flight on ships, that system is an AI system, but it's an AI system in the sense that what we call AI today. Not in the like Cortana or HAL 9000 or ship's computer in Star Trek kind of even not even that degree. So IA is until now quite prohibited as, or AI you're talking about, yeah. I understood, but is there lore about Underground Corporation working on that direction? Oh yeah, lots. There's plenty of AI tech that's being worked on by ArcCorp. There's a big one. Microtech. They all have AI programs, but they're skirting the edge of legality, and the current imperator wants to reopen AI development. That's her big kind of push. That was her big campaign promise. And it scared the fuck out of the Senate. Because you have to understand, every time AI, because we've built AI, humans have built functional, semi-sentient AI systems that work like we think of as they've existed for hundreds of years. The problem is that every time we gave them any responsibility, they kill hundreds of people. Hundreds, if not thousands of people. Or damn near kill hundreds, if not thousands of people. Because the only way to test them at high scales is to give them lots of responsibility. And in testing, they work fine. The second you put them in the real world, they break. And giving them such high amounts of issues, like, for instance, let's take for a real world example, which is the auto driving features on Teslas have, not proven to be 100% infallible. And even though, I don't know what the actual error rate is. I'm sure it's less than 5%. But the fact that there's less than 5% means that there are many horror stories. And what's happening right now? There's a lot of call from people to outlaw AI driving systems because they think they're unsafe and they're dangerous. That's all it requires. All it requires is a tiny little bit of controversy, and suddenly that technology becomes banned. So that's the kind of situation you have in Star Citizen. It's fantastic. I listen to you while either mining or cargoing in your input and knowledge and immersive in the verse. Yes? Oh, I was knocking on the door. AGI's outlawed artificial general intelligence? Yeah, effectively. AGI, the general intelligence systems. Something that's the equivalent of a human would be outlawed. Is there any one faction that has been main hold in Pyro system? Yes, it's Xenothreat. Our old friends Xeno threat. They're the ones who control most of Pyro. There are multiple factions, though. There's the... something about the hats. Can't remember the exact name of them. There's the Fire Rats. There's the Overlords. There's... a couple other systems as well, but... I mean, it's not like kill all humans. The AI just screws up in such a way that they cause a lot of people to die. It's not like Skynet where like oh, I gotta kill everyone. It's more like they screw up a calculation because they overcorrect, or they sense a threat that didn't actually exist and then adjust and then end up getting people killed. You think of it as like an AI driving system, which recognizes a threat that isn't there, has an error in its system, and immediately causes a turn or another issue where it wasn't supposed to, goes into a complicated area, and then doesn't know what to do, freaks out and crashes and kills people. That kind of thing. The Bakal, for that weapon, Drac, I'd love to see that too. Do you think we'll see Algrid immortalized in lore? I would love to see Old Man Al. It's important to note, Algrid and Old Man Al are two different people. Old Man Al is a character that Al plays. But I'd love to see, I think even Al would love to see Old Man Al immortalized in lore. It would be a nice little touch to the to it. But I don't think even CIG knows about Old Man Al. I'd love to see CIG learn about him, but thou shalt not make a machine in the likeness of human mind. Yes. Now, the reason why AI is outlawed actually has to do with the universe that Chris Roberts wanted to create. I've actually talked to I'm forgetting his name off the top of my head, the lead writer of Star Citizen, which it's bad, Paul. That's bad. You should know this guy. Dave Haddock. Talked to Dave Haddock about this, and he said the reason why they had AI banned was because Chris did not want AI in the game. He didn't want your ships to have AI control. He wanted to have a reason why you're flying your ships around like World War II dogfighters. Because AI would be, you wouldn't be flying dogfighters, you'd have AI systems control those things, as we have now. Remote controls or some automated controls. And so, as a result, AI being banned has become a huge narrative sticking point, a huge kind of wheel upon which the narrative turns is AI. Yeah, Haddock. It also means that Star Citizen tends to get a little bit of grimdark aspects to it because of that. There's a lot of grimdark narratives. 40K, Dune have that whole point that AI is banned. What's the deal with entertainment media? E1 Spirit has a widescreen TVs in every booth, but will passengers watch? They'll watch Spectrum. So Spectrum is an in-universe entertainment system. It is the internet mixed with cable television. So Spectrum doesn't have sites, they have channels. And some channels on Spectrum are watchable. You can watch them because they produce media, like you would say like a 24-hour news network or whatever. And some channels on Spectrum are websites where you can go to and interact with other information and stuff like that. So Spectrum is this multimedia entertainment platform, which was originally designed as a communications platform to get information back and forth, which is why you had channels, kind of like radio. And then that changed into entertainment, so some channels just became just data that you can access. But yeah, that's Spectrum. Thank you, Keystone Pirate. And in relation to Gurney, I don't know who that is. Gurney Shelley, is it you're asking? No, I don't know who that is. Or Gurney Hurston? Also, do you think we'll see more lore on the first inhabitants of Stanton? Maybe tied into the crew of the Artemis. So that's actually been asked multiple times. The story of the Artemis crew, pieces of the Artemis being found in Stanton, is actually not canon. That is in lore, in lore story. So you can think of it as like a Indiana Jones story inside of the Star Citizen universe. So it's speculative fiction inside the Star Citizen universe. It's not actually true. And a lot of people have been reporting on it as true, which has added to the confusion. But anything that is labeled as serialized fiction has dubious canonical realities. So no, I don't think they'll do anything about Artemis, but I do think they'll do something about the original inhabitants, because they're going to have to do something. Because for those of you who don't know, one of the reasons why they're adding all these colonial outposts to Stanton is because there was groups of people who lived in Stanton before the UEE discovered that Stanton existed. Pirates, outlaws, frontiersmen, people who wanted to stay off the grid had discovered or been told about Stanton, and when they got there. So when the UEE found out about it, several people had already established colonies all over the Stanton system. And the UEE decided to deal with them the way that governments tend to deal with things that they want and other people are sitting on, which is extreme violence. There's a reference to the original lore post of the Galactic Guide for Stanton, which was they sent in a Bengal carrier group, and they removed that in the popular in the release. So, but it's still heavily implied that the UEE did some get out or we kill you kind of ultimatums for the people, because the UEE are not the good guys. It's important to emphasize the UEE is not good in the Star Citizen universe. They'll portray themselves as the good, but they are the lesser of multiple evils, is effectively what they are. Gurney Haddock. Oh, I don't know. I don't know if Dave's full name, I don't know if that's his nom de plume or if it's his actual name. Oh God, watching Spectrum, that doesn't sound fun. Yeah, it's kind of gotten corrupted with what Spectrum is now. But I'm actually going to do a video on the, when 318 is out and stable, I'm going to sit down and do a video on the first inhabitants of Stanton, kind of explaining what Stanton was inhabited before, going to the different sites, and seeing what we can pull from the lore based off of these locations. What system, planet, moon do you personally want to build your base and home on the future when we have many systems? Magnus. Do you think we'll see other alien races be playable? CIG at one point said they wanted to do that. I think that we will, but I think that's a long ways away. Post-release sort of thing. And release could be anywhere between 5 and a billion years. I have no idea when CIG is going to release this game. Is there any lore about the first test regeneration with the Ibrahim sphere? No, there's not. Not yet. They haven't really gotten in depth with that. There's only 2 lore stories that specifically tackle the issue. One of which is about an actor who trained so hard, who did so much method acting that he died several times of exposure to get into the head of a character who is going to play. And then the production company that hired him removed him from the project, but effectively signed him a contract that said that no matter what happens, he would still get paid for his time. And so he was demanding his pay, and the company was losing money on the project as it was, and they were like, it doesn't count because you were technically dead. You died, so you weren't the person who signed the contract. Now, that was the person who signed is dead, so we're out of that contract now. And so that became a big discussion on how that's going to be dealing with, are people who were generated still the same person legally, or are they separate? And then the other lore story that was told about it was at the end of the Crossroads story, we find out that Tavarin can be regenerated. So we know that at least humanity and Tavarin can go through the regeneration process. Dave Haddock's real name is Frank Sardine. What's the other species you think? What do the other species think of humanity's synth world? The Xian like it. The Tavarin think it's folly. And the Banu are just happy to be participating. And the Vanduul, they don't even know about it. Otherwise, they'd have already attacked it. You should do lore-only Q&As, monthly or bi-monthly thing. I could do a monthly thing. Imagine an in-game period piece about our modern times. Complete with all the mistakes it would probably have. Was the actor Kevin Spacey? Is Pico in lore? As far as I know, Pico is in lore, and just that Pico is a mascot for Microtech. That's Pico's lore. Is that Pico is in fact the mascot of Microtech. I don't know if that the joke is, are there penguins in Microtech? And the answer is no, but they still have Pico the penguin. Where I realize how subtly grimdark regeneration is. Yeah, You don't just permanently die, sure, but you go through all the pain, physical trauma, psychological trauma of death. It's dark as fuck. Like, that's the reason why when I hear people like complain about it, I'm like, you don't die, but you remember dying. You remember the experience. You remember, and if you die slowly, if you like died from slowly bleeding out, you have that memory burned into your brain. So you could think of it as people who have experienced severe trauma from injuries, people who have spent hours bleeding out before getting rescued and survive. They are completely changed by that event. That happens on a regular basis now, but you don't have to be saved. You can remember yourself slowly bleeding out and dying in the middle of the woods and then waking up in a hospital. Like that guy in the couple of months back who had a life sentence on a DNR and he was resuscitated in jail and argued he'd served his sentence. Oh, yeah. I guess that's where they got the inspiration for it. That story was very recent, so. Question, what do we know about the Banu and Vanduul trade? We talked about this in the last Lore Citizen, but the Banu trade with a specific clan of Vanduul. So the Vanduul have two major formations. They have clans and they have hordes. The clan is a smaller group, possibly related groups, but they tend to split off on their own. And then there's the hordes, which are these large groups of Vanduul that serve together. And the larger the horde, like, the more important and the more powerful they are. So we know that at least the Vanduul and the Xian have, or the Vanduul and the Banu have small working relationship with one another. They do trade, they do talk, they do discuss back and forth, but it is very tenuous. You know, it's they trade, but it's not like gregarious open trading. It's like trading with both sides putting guns at each other to make sure the trade goes through. It's very tense. If Star Citizen is grimdark, where do I sign up to fight for the greater good? Star Citizen is not grimdark. I will say that Star Citizen is what I like to call grim punk. It is light grimdark with light cyberpunk added to it. Because some of the major themes of cyberpunk is corporate dystopia, where corporations are controlling humanity, that there's technology run amok, that there's no real moral or legal restrictions on how dark you can get with technology. There's often space travel in Cyberpunk's universes, like Blade Runner. But it's also heavy environmental damage. There's a lot of it's a dystopia, effectively, but controlled by corporations. When Star Citizen has heavy elements of that, but it also has grimdark elements in that no one is good. Everything has horrible undertones. But again, as we talked with Dave Haddock, you don't want this to be a horrible, depressing nightmare. You want to have some good side to it. So there are points of light, people or organizations or places that are not horrible, where people can get some semblance of real life and some sense of hope and hope for the future. There is still hope for the future, which is why it's not a grimdark narrative, but for the Emperor, yes. Why don't the Mezzers conquer the Banu? Because they had, they actually answered this in a Q&A. The quarterly Q&A that the lore team does. They said because they have working relationships with the Banu, and it was hard to justify it was hard for the Mezzers to justify war with the Banu because they had already had a good working trade relationship. So while they distrusted Xenos, the Xeno distrust mostly was on the Vandul, the Tavaran, and the Xi'an, because they couldn't spin it. By that point, humanity had been in contact with the Banu for almost 200 years, and the Banu had showed almost literally nothing in terms of aggression towards humanity. So it would have been a very big ask to try to label the Banu as the bad guy. Getting munched on by an empty Microtech Bigfoot would be a horrifying memory. Yep, slowly being eaten by a boreal stalker. My character was from Hurston. My family was there before the UE. This is why I hate Hurstons and UE. Hey, that works. Star Citizen is a blade jogger. Yes, that's a good way of putting it. I can totally freak out subculture of death junkies, like adrenaline junkies, bizarre death experiences, getting close to dying as possible, etc. Yeah, that's one of the things when I said that the full implication of regeneration is nuts. It opens up so many different story elements because CIG is going just deep, absolutely hardcore into it, which makes Star Citizen have this unique element. I did talk about how I don't think there's many other science fiction universes that have something like regeneration, because you do have things like Altered Carbon, which have sleeves, but you're functionally immortal with sleeves. With regen, you're not functionally immortal. You will die. You'll still die at some point, to the point where you're not coming back. But it has it's so unique in that take. And there are a couple of other apparent. Someone pointed out to me there is at least one other narrative that uses something similar in a sci-fi narrative that someone had read, but it wasn't something that I was very mainstream, I think. So the fact that Star Citizen is attaching itself to that makes it a little bit more, I think, accessible. It's a storytelling, especially in video games, that have never been done before like that. The only other kind of video games that I could think of that held story like that would be, to a lighter degree, wasn't it Dead Space did something like that? But it's not the same. Like even with Eve, you're a clone. You're not the same person. You're a clone, and you're just infinitely effectively immortal. So. And I'm off today. I'll stop. It's okay. We're going to finish up here in about 10 minutes or so. I love that they have integrated respawning into lore. Everything has lore. For those of you who are just newer to Star Citizen, anything you can point at in game has a story behind it. All of it has lore. The food you eat has lore. The only thing that's limited right now is that a lot of that lore is not fully fleshed out, but there's still a lot. Every ship in the game has lore. Every ship company, every company that manufactures components, every component has lore. Every weapon has lore. Every weapons company has lore. Food, drink, suits, armor, clothing, locations, everything has a story and lore behind it. How far do you think CIG will let players push back the Vanduul threat? Would their extermination be a consideration? Yeah, I think to a degree. I don't think you'll be able to find the Vanduul homeworld until CIG lets you find the Vanduul homeworld or Vanduul homeworlds, just for narrative sakes, but I think they'll let you push about as far back as they can. What are you going to do, lore? Do a video on meat chunk lore? Then, Ponty, look at how well my video is doing on Luminalia, and I'll tell that should tell you. No one cares. That's the sad part about lore. I love doing it, and there's some more obscure aspects of lore I'd love to do. And I know people would watch it, but it just wouldn't do well for the algorithm, which sadly I'm still tied to. And I always explain this because it's important to understand. I like doing what I do. I wouldn't do it if I wasn't. I don't need to do this. It's just fun. But I also want to succeed in it. And I want to get to the point where I can make a video on the obscure drinks of Star Citizen lore and not have to worry about it. But right now, nobody really cares about Star Citizen lore. It's a niche within a niche. Star Citizen itself is a niche in gaming, and the lore of Star Citizen is even more niche inside of Star Citizen. As a result, until the lore becomes more important, I have to rely on things like ship lore, which is much more popular because people want to know the story behind their ships, because ships are the main attraction for a lot of people who follow and play Star Citizen. So until then, I'm not going to be able to do many videos on the meat chunks of Star Citizen, though I'd love to do it. What's my favorite war in Star Citizen lore? First Tavaran War, probably. It's the most important one. The Vanduul have homeworlds. We haven't found women or children. As far as we know, they aren't like an asexual or whatever. I don't remember how Jail put it, but like they do have an infant state, and they do have another like biological sex of some kind. Maybe more, we don't know. But we've only found one in our encounters with them, which indicates that, and it's just adult species. So it indicates that there are infants and other ways of creating infants somewhere else, some sort of homeworld. And all of the metal that Tavaran knives are made from there is parts of that metal that has an exact origin. So every Tavaran knife has metal from a very specific location, which is the same location. We don't know where, but it's a very specific location. So that indicates there's at least a homeworld of the Vanduul somewhere. Yeah, the Second Tavaran War is just the Wing Commander. It's just Wing Commander movie, yeah. Cool. What's your favorite war area? It's a favorite war. My favorite battle is the Battle of Caliban. The Fall of Caliban is a pretty good one. Though I do really like the Battle of Korean Pass. It's a very fascinating battle where like 4 Nova Tonks took on thousands of Tavaran, which had been hiding in the mountains of this world, and and took on for like several hours before they got relieved. What's my profession? My day-to-day profession is a teacher. I'm a high school social studies teacher. So, do we have time for lore about the infamous Squadron 42? Sure. What do you want to know? Probably Parthenegetic Ponty would be what one would work. But we don't know. We just do not know. Everything that we know about the Vanduul indicates that there's at least another biological sex that exists in Vanduul life, but we've never seen it. And we haven't seen any infant Vanduul. There's no child state of Vanduul that we know. So, thank you, Drake. I know a lot of people, there's plenty of people who care about the lore stuff. And don't get me wrong, I enjoy that. But I also want to see the channel grow. I want to get, I want to be able to do this more frequently. I'd love to do this full time, honestly. But I'm just not in that, the cards aren't right yet. Soon, but not yet. And so until then, I have to kind of work with what has. Every so often I'll drop a video on the food of Star Citizen or Terra Mills or something like that. So the spirits will be given away on the 30th, tomorrow, I believe. And on the Astro Pub channel. So. Thank you, Ponty. Have a good night. Enjoy your flight. Thank you, Pelly. What's the Inception? What did the Squadron mean? Okay, so Squadron 42. We'll finish this off on here, and then I'll kind of call it. So Squadron 42, for those who don't know, because this is the important bit to understand about the game. So Squadron 42 was a penal squadron. They were formed in the Second Tevarin War based off of pilots who were good enough to fight, but were insubordinate. If you've played Ace Combat 7, that squadron, effectively. So they invested a lot of time and effort into getting them trained, but didn't want to waste them by throwing them in jail or killing them. So the problem that most Squadron 42 had, people in Squadron 42 had, was that they were all very good, but they were arrogant pieces of shit and wouldn't follow orders. So the leader of Squadron 42 during the Second Tevarin War, look up her name. It was founded during the First Tevarin War. They call it the Keel Squad. But it wasn't really being famous until Alexandria Dunleavy, Captain Alexandria Dunleavy, took control of Squadron 42. And she learned that the 42nd Squadron's best aspect was how good they were. But they couldn't be told to do specific, give the order. So what she would do was give them very general orders, like destroy that ship or rescue those hostages, and then let them go. Give them carte blanche to achieve that mission goal how they saw fit. And when she did that, they worked very well. They did their job extremely well because of how talented they were. But they weren't so, because they were effectively convicts, they weren't really trusted by the Navy to do much. So they were a rear guard action during the Battle of Centauri, which was this major aspect. It was the last stand before the Second Tevarin War, before the Tevarin fleet was to arrive at their former homeworld to reconquer it. And it was literally, Squadron 42 was the only thing that stood between the Tevarin and victory. And Alexandra Dunleavy had a plan, which she ran past the admiral, who basically said, I don't care, we've already lost. Just do what you can. And so she got Squadron 42 into bombers and had them turn their engines off, turn their ships off entirely near the jump point. The fleet engaged the Tevarin fleet, didn't do so well, and retreated. And in the debris fields, the bombers looked like other debris from the battle. The problem was that the jump point was so small that it required the Tevarin capital ships to jump one at a time through the jump point. And so after the first Tevarin capital ship made it through, Alexandria basically sent Captain Dunleavy told the entire squadron to activate and take out the capital ships. That's all she told them to do. And because they were too spread out, they couldn't use what were called the phalanx shield, which effectively allowed them to overlap their shields into a giant bubble to protect themselves. And they were too tight in, the bombers were too tight in for them to maneuver, because they couldn't maneuver outside of it. So these bombers just slaughtered the probably retaliators, honestly, slaughtered these Servarian capital ships and clogged up the entrance to the jump point. So they became stuck. They couldn't leave, they couldn't move, and they just got picked apart. And those Tevarin that were able to escape basically were done for. They weren't going to be able to any kind of fighting force, which caused what we know as today as the Tears of Fire, when they decided if they were going to die, they were going to die on their home world. And so they crashed their ships into their home world, which created these big flaming like debris fields to kind of go all over the planet of Elysium. So since then, they've become a expert. Like they became famous. Squadron 42 became this big poster child. They won the Second Tevarin War, and they became the elite of the elite. They still function the same way, where they're given carte blanche to do whatever they need to do. They're said, hey, let's accomplish this goal however you want to. We also know that the most recent leader before the current leader, who I think his name is Terrence Nolan, who's played by gosh, why am I blanking on his name? Henry Cavill. So Henry Cavill it plays Terrence Nolan, which is the leader of modern Squadron 42. But Captain Aria Reily was famous for she was the leader of Squad 42. She became famous for championing the use of the Hornet. And it was Squadron 42 who first really adopted the Hornet as a combat ship and showed how good it was. So that's why the Wildfire Hornet, for instance, is based off of Aria Reily's loadout. So Squadron 42 is effectively the elite squadron of the UEE Navy. So like the Dirty Dozen, kind of. That's what their origin is. They're no longer that. They're no longer a Keel squad, but yeah. The IDF 7th Brigade, 1973. Brave the Last Stand, okay. Being a space trucker myself, do you think CIG will give us better weapons for the whole A's? 2 size 1s doesn't seem enough. Probably not. The reason why they use the guns is more for psychological purposes, if anything. We'll be able to play Tevarin Wars and Theaters of War? I don't know. Possibly. Space Above and Beyond. Yes, the pilot. I remember that. I remember that plot. Yeah. Before you go, is there concept art from you behind it from Star Citizen? Yes, this is from Rudder. This is Rudder, one of the Rudder University, I think. This is concept art for Rudder. First rules of sales is you first sell what sells, then you want to then what you want to sell. Yeah, basically. Squad 42 equals VMF 214, the Black Sheep? No, the Black Crows of 214. The Squadron 214 is a thing in Star Citizen. They're called the Black Crows, not the Black Sheep, and they are exactly the Black Sheep Squadron from the VMF 214 from is it real? It was a real squadron in because I know there's a TV show based off of it, but they the Black Sheep Squadron, but they were the from the Pacific War, Marine pilots from Pacific War. Do you know if Wing Commander has a place in Squad 42 lore? No, sadly, no, it doesn't. There's heavily based off of it. I know you talked to this with us a lot, but could you see a condensed version of a civil war in Charon began? Okay, I'll give that one because it's just very short. Effectively, the end of the Mezzer era. The Mezzers had their political prisons in Charon, and after the end of the Mezzer era, Charon, the people of Charon, who had been heavily oppressed because of it, overthrew their leaders and freed prisoners. And then there's not enough change that happened in the UEE, so they left the UEE because they felt like this is just the same shit, different day. But the problem is that by that point, the Mezzers had tested experimental chemical and biological weapons on prisoners, so the planet itself was soaked in biological contaminants, which made it hard for them to grow crops. So during the early 29th century, a famine hit, and the two major polities, the two major countries in Charon began to go to war with one another over this famine, effectively, because refugees tried to come into one. They tried to stop those refugees from happening. They started shooting refugees. The other side decided they were going to get involved, and so it was just this big war that's been going on, off and on, about spiraling out of control because of that. I do got to wrap this up here shortly, but question: lore on the new race courses in 3.18. Are they just thrown in? There is some lore behind it. I haven't looked at them, but I assume that there's some sort of racing organization that they've created in lore for it. They definitely have official, even in the time trials. There's some. If you look at it, there's a somewhere on there that's a organization that's doing it. So probably the same organization that runs the Murray Cup. Yeah, Charon is a place that is designed by gameplay point of view to always be a conflict zone. So if you want to go have that battlefield planet-side experience, you go to Charon. Charon is planet-side, where you're always going to be able to find someone to fight for some credits, and be able to do missions and other things which are more combat-oriented, and have AI to fight against. It's probably one of the cooler systems to go to in terms of just if you want to fight, there it is. Oh, a lot of actors who acted in Squad 42 probably forgot that they acted in Squad 42. It's been like 6 years since they recorded their mocap. So, yeah, that's going to be it for today. Again, let me know. I'm going to leave this up after the fact. So if you are watching this after the fact on YouTube, and make sure you hit that likes button. If you enjoyed this and you enjoyed lore, if you somehow this is a video you've discovered, or if, like I always say, if this is the second time you've watched one of my videos, consider hitting that subscribe button if you haven't already done so. Let me know in the chat, in the comments, your own questions. I'll try to answer them, as well as if you want to see me do this on a monthly basis. It'll usually be a little later than it is today, probably more around 9, and probably on Wednesdays if I can swing it, but at 9 p.m. Eastern, I should say. But if you do want me to do this, I can do this as a monthly thing for you to come and chat. Love to do it. I love talking lore and all that kind of stuff, and I don't always get to do that when we talk on my office hours. But if you want to see more general discussion about Star Citizen as a whole, gaming as a whole, you see my models that I paint and all that kind of stuff, check me out at the AstroPub live, youtube.com/theastropub live, or just the AstroPub on YouTube, and the AstroPub on Twitch. We'll see you there as well. Thank you all for hanging out. Love your faces. And like I say every time, remember, ex historia ad astro.